Welcome back. I do recognize quite a few of those names, so welcome back to those of you who've been here before. If anyone hasn't, we are the Marine Environmental Education Center located out on Hollywood Beach, Florida. Unfortunately, we are still closed. We are a pretty small facility, and our goal is to educate and engage with the public about environmental science issues and marine science issues. So it's very important to us to still be able to engage with everyone and have an open discussion about environmental conservation and environmental issues. So we started this webinar series to continue with that goal. We are offering webinars every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. So we are just concluding our November series, and we will be posting our December schedule in the near future. So keep an eye on all of our socials at Seek the MEEC. Otherwise, we are lucky enough to be talking to Catherine Uden today. So welcome. So Catherine is going to be talking to us about campaigning for a cause. She is actually the campaign organizer for Oceana in South Florida. They work on so many different campaigns, successful campaigns to reduce plastic pollution, protect coastal habitats, and ensure public beach access. They have so many different campaigns going on right now to help protect our local environment and our local community. So we are going to learn a little bit about what she's been doing, what they're working on, and what you all can do to help. So as usual, we are going to keep everyone muted and everyone's videos off just so you could hear and see Catherine most clearly. But if you do have any questions, comments, concerns, if you have any technical issues, please go ahead, throw that into the chat. I'll be here the whole time monitoring that chat and making sure that I can help from afar. I will try to help with those technical issues virtually if possible. Otherwise, Catherine will get to all the questions at the end. Otherwise, I think that's about it for me. So whenever you're ready, feel free to take it away.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. Thank you everybody who's joining from home. I appreciate it. I'm gonna share my screen here. And I'm going to be giving you a real broad overview of all of Oceana's campaigns, telling you what we're all about and what I do and how you can help. So again, my name is Catherine Uden. I'm the South Florida campaign organizer for Oceana. And I work down here in Southeast Florida to rally support for all of our campaigns. And Oceana is the largest international nonprofit organization solely dedicated to protecting the ocean. So we work mainly on federal ocean policy. And Oceana is international. It's we have offices around the world. I work on our US campaigns. So I rally support here in South Florida for our US campaigns. And every country has its own set of campaigns depending on what their issues are and what they need to work on. And Oceana's campaigns are really centered around these principles, stopping overfishing, reducing bycatch, protecting habitats, increasing transparency, such as in our seafood fraud campaign, and curbing pollution, like in our plastics campaign. So how we work, we're campaign driven. We work on very, very specific laser focused campaigns throughout the year. They're fact-based, expedition powered, multidisciplinary, and we have a team of scientists in Washington, D.C. that work on these issues and give us excellent data and research to back our campaigns. And we're also supported by citizens and allies. So we also work grassroots here in the field, rallying support from the public. And Oceana's approach, we identify and achieve our goals by identifying key decision makers, and we leverage science, law, grassroots engagement, advocacy, and strategic communications to win victories for the oceans. And if you go onto our website, oceana.org, and then to usa.oceana.org, you're going to find our campaigns, and you can click on them and learn more about them and how you can help. We have illegal fishing and seafood fraud, responsible fishing campaign, climate and energy, where you'll find our offshore drilling campaign. We have our shark fin campaign, where we are working to pass a ban on the sale and trade of shark fins in the United States. Our plastic pollution campaign, and we also have a campaign to save the North Atlantic right. And all of these campaigns also have a link where you can, when you sign any of the petitions, you put in your address, it will go straight through to your members of Congress that day. So they're very, very helpful, and we appreciate any time you can go on and sign any of these petitions. So I'm going to go through real quick some of our campaigns and then kind of dive deeper into some of the ones that I work more on down here in South Florida. So one of the things that we work on is our responsible fishing and protecting the Magnuson-Stevens Act. So the Magnuson-Stevens Act was enacted back in 1976, and this is basically to protect our fishing laws and make sure that we are not overfishing the ocean, that we have healthy, abundant oceans full of fish. So setting catch limits, making sure we are protecting habitat, using responsible fishing practices. And of course, this is usually always under attack. And so we work to defend it and make sure that we are not overfishing our oceans, which is very important for feeding the world. Then we also work on protecting the Marine Mammal Protection Act. And this is to protect animals like whales, dolphins, seals, manatees. And this is making sure that we have, healthy populations of marine mammals, that we're protecting their habitat, and any law, anything that's done to that could possibly harm these animals. We cite the Marine Mammal Protection Act as an important reason to either pass something or not pass something. So we also work on defending the Endangered Species Act, and the Endangered Species Act, of course, has been very successful in making sure that our animal populations aren't becoming threatened or endangered or extinct. And it's been wildly popular, of course, always under attack as well. So we work to defend that. We also have a North Atlantic right whale campaign. So the North Atlantic right whale is in a lot of trouble. They're on the verge of extinction. There were something like 400 or so of them left, and Oceana actually recently did another report that the populations were somewhat worse than they thought, and you can read more about that on our website on a recent press release. So the Oceana is working to ask the US and Canadian governments to protect these animals, mainly through making sure they're not becoming entangled in fishing gear where they swim and where they travel, and also making sure that ships are adhering to speed limits, because a lot of these animals are in danger of being hit by boats, and they do get hit by boats, and this can cause injury and death. So the recommendations of Oceana is to ask the US and Canadian governments to protect these animals through responsible fishing gear, and also asking ships to adhere to speed limits. We also defend our marine national monuments. So marine national monuments are enacted to protect irreplaceable habitat, making sure that we are not endangering what is in these national monuments through things like mining the seafloor, drilling, bottom trawling, things like that. Earlier this year, there was a rollback of protections for the Northeast and Seamounts Marine National Monument off the coast of New England. So Oceana, when things like that happen, we alert our wave makers, our supporters, and ask them to contact their members of Congress and do something about it. So it's really important to sign these petitions. For example, if you care about marine national monuments and you sign that petition, it goes through to your member of Congress, but then your name is also with us as a wave maker on that issue. So if something else were to happen on that issue and we need your support and we need your help in contacting your member of Congress, it will let you know. So we appreciate all the support that you give us on those campaigns. And then another campaign that I work a lot on, that I have worked a lot on in the past 2 years with Oceana, is our offshore drilling campaign under Climate and Energy. We work to protect Florida's coasts and the Atlantic coast from new offshore drilling. So who makes the decision on offshore drilling is the Department of the Interior, which currently is Secretary David Bernhardt, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, BOEM, and then the President and Congress are able to limit the areas available for leasing for oil and gas drilling. And the reason why we were working on this and defending our waters is because in 2017, the Trump administration announced that nearly all US waters were proposed for offshore drilling for oil and gas. So all of the red areas that you see here. And then before offshore drilling occurs, they would have to do a really invasive process called seismic airgun blasting. Seismic airgun blasting is basically searching the sea for possible oil and gas deposits. And these are the areas seismic airgun blasting would occur. So these are different companies that received incidental harm authorizations in order to get seismic airgun blasting permits. So the incidental harm authorizations basically gives them permission to harm a certain number of dolphins, whales, sea turtles, and we were working on making sure that this didn't happen. So this is seismic airgun blasting, and this is how it works. So there is a boat and it tows a large array. This large array is full of compressed air. This compressed air comes out like an explosion underwater about every 10 to 12 seconds. It is louder, 100,000 times louder than a jet engine underwater. It is very obviously disturbing to all marine life, even down to the smallest creatures in the ocean. This sound comes out, it penetrates the ocean floor, and it lets them know where possible oil and gas deposits are. So before this occurs, and to get these permits, they have to put forth an environmental impact statement. So these are some of the things that were in the environmental impact statement, admitting to injuries, possible death to as many as 138,000 whales and dolphins, obviously impact to so many impacts to marine mammals, disruption of our sea turtle sites, reduction in spawning rates for forage fish, and other commercially important fish species, and impacts to the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale, which I let you know is the populations are not doing well at all. So this is offshore drilling, and these are the things that could go wrong during offshore drilling. So a variety of things can happen: pipeline leaks, drilling operation leaks, platform spills, production spills, and these kind of things happen all the time. There are accidents and spills all the time, and Oceana's put out a few reports regarding spills, cleanup methods, and what's been happening over the past few years. So there's also an oil spill in the Gulf that's been leaking, I think, over 15 years now, the Taylor oil rig. These things obviously cause harm to seagrass, coral reefs, birds, fish, mammals, mangroves, estuaries, and there are human impacts as well. So the Deepwater Horizon disaster, a little over 10 years now, we just came across the 10-year anniversary recently. The Deepwater Horizon disaster was in the Gulf of Mexico. It killed 11 people. It spilled over 200 million gallons of oil. It was an exploratory well, and it was due to a failed blowout preventer. And yes, there were some regulations put in place after this disaster, but unfortunately, we were weakening these safeguards and rolling back these regulations because I think the oil and gas industry just found them very restrictive. So unfortunately, it was not any safer after the Deepwater Horizon disaster occurred. And again, this is an exploratory well. So after you do seismic airgun blasting and you get a reading of the ocean floor, that reading is not 100%. In order to be sure, you have to drill. So it doesn't end at seismic airgun blasting. You have to drill in order to find the oil and gas and to know that it's possible. And that's what the Deepwater Horizon disaster was. It was an exploratory well. So Oceana came out with a report for the 10-year anniversary of the Deepwater Horizon disaster. It was called Hindsight 2020, Lessons We Cannot Ignore from the BP Disaster. And we found that between 2007 and 2018, there were over 7,000 oil spills in federal waters, which is an average of about 2 every day, 115 fires and explosions in federal waters on average every year. And there were also more than 3,000 injuries and 48 fatalities in total. So although we may not hear about it a lot in the news, it is happening. Drills happen, spills happen all the time. When we drill, we spill. So the economic impacts, obviously, huge economic impacts on fishing, tourism, recreation, and real estate. And Florida's clean coast economy of fishing, tourism, and recreation were providing approximately 610,000 jobs and roughly $37.4 billion in GDP. And when you looked at the nation's clean coast economy, that was 2.6 million jobs, $180 billion in GDP, and all of this really for only 2 years worth of oil and 1 year's worth of gas. So when you think about the risks involved, you know, it did not weigh up, and it was not worth the risk at all to be opening up our waters to new offshore drilling. This is the status of legislation on state drilling, state legislation on offshore drilling. So this is just in state waters, and Floridians became a little bit confused after we voted to ban offshore drilling in state waters. You know, those are not federal waters. So state waters is only 3 miles in the Atlantic and 9 miles in the Gulf. So anything outside of that is really what we're talking about here. And 3 miles and 9 miles, that doesn't offer a whole lot of protection at all. So though it did send a very strong message to Washington, D.C. and to our federal lawmakers that we did not want this, it really did not offer us a whole lot of protection. So then what happened very recently before the election is President Trump issued an executive order, and that removed Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina from the proposed plan. And so what you see here is kind of an updated map after that occurred, and the areas that are striped there are the presidential withdrawal, and the areas in red were the areas that were still on the table. Now in the Eastern Gulf, there was a moratorium after the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster. That moratorium was set to expire in 2022. So it was, you know, nearing close to that time. Now, shortly after this executive order was announced, there was another announcement about North Carolina, possibly Virginia. But, you know, what was really important is very shortly after that, what happened with the seismic airgun blasting permits, there was recognition that the incidental harm authorizations, which had lawsuits pending due to the Marine Mammal Protection Act and other things, those IHAs would expire on November 30th. So there was no mechanism to extend them to be able to get these seismic permits and the boats in the water. There was acknowledgement that seeking new permits would move the lengthy process back to square one because there's a process that it has to go through. And there was a concession from lawyers representing the seismic industry that it would not be feasible to launch boats this year. So we were, you know, safe from this year. They would not be able to get the boats in the water, and they would have to start back from square one with the process. So that was a big seismic win. So what we continue to do is that executive order was not permanent. It was a 10-year. So, you know, obviously we want our waters protected permanently from offshore drilling. We continue to build our opposition. More than 380 municipalities, including 99 in Florida, have passed resolutions. And actually the town of Jupiter is going to be voting on the 100th resolution today at their city meeting, and we hope that it passes. Over 11 chambers of commerce in Florida have passed resolutions opposing offshore drilling because of the threat to our clean coast economy. We get support from fishing groups, business owners, the DP, military stakeholders, and NASA, because the Gulf of Mexico is an important military testing site, and the military was opposed to having drilling activities in the Gulf. So there was a victory last year, September 11th, 2019. The House of Representatives passed HR 1941 and HR 205. Those were permanent drilling moratoriums. And unfortunately, though, there were no Senate companion bills. You know, nothing has happened in the Senate. So, you know, we continue to ask our Congress to offer permanent protections from offshore drilling for both the Gulf, the Atlantic, and we don't, you know, obviously opposed to new offshore drilling in the Pacific as well. And you can go to, this is another site that you can go to find out more information about this campaign, stopthedrill.org. And moving on to another campaign that we've been working on is our shark fin campaign. So shark finning is illegal in the United States, but the sale and trade of fins is not. So obviously that is a problem and a loophole, and it allows this trade to continue to be a problem. We are asking our Congress to pass S877, which is the Shark Fin Sales Elimination Act. Now, why are sharks important? So sharks are important to ocean ecosystems. They structure marine food webs, increase an area's biodiversity, and they remove sick and weak individuals from prey populations. So we need sharks. Sharks are an important part of our healthy ocean ecosystems. But unfortunately, many of the sharks targeted for their fins have long lifespans. They mature very slowly and produce relatively few young. It makes them very vulnerable to overexploitation. And we're seeing a lot of shark populations really dropping. And we believe that this law would be a huge step forward for shark conservation. Fins from as many as 73 million sharks end up in the global shark fin trade every year. The US is the #2 importer in the Western Hemisphere. US finning is illegal, but many fins coming into the US came from countries that don't have a finning ban. So nations like China, Indonesia, Japan, and Thailand. So far, 13 states have shark fin bans and 2 additional states have limited bans, and that's Florida and New Hampshire. So Florida's ban allows commercial fishermen to still continue to trade in fins. So we are working on the Shark Fin Sales Elimination Act. Again, we had a victory in November 2019. The House of Representatives did pass the Shark Fin Sales Elimination Act, and it passed with huge bipartisan support. It was a bipartisan bill. We are asking the Senate to pass the Senate version, which is S877. So down here in Florida, you can ask Senators Rubio and Scott to support this bill. And this needs to go for a vote, and we need to pass this bill. So another campaign that we work on at Oceana, and I do a lot of work on here in South Florida, is our plastic pollution campaign. And the problem is that plastic is made from a material that is designed to last for centuries. And it's a huge problem in our oceans right now. It breaks up into tiny pieces, it photodegrades, and is eaten by ocean animals, even the tiniest creatures, and humans are now, eating, breathing, and drinking plastic. So, this is a problem that we really need to do something. It requires serious action immediately. So how does plastic end up in the ocean? Plastic doesn't have to be necessarily dumped right into the ocean. Plastic on the streets can wash into storm drains, and those empty into the ocean. The wind and the rain can transport plastic waste from landfills to streams and rivers. And down here in Florida, we have a lot of canals that are connecting and empty into the ocean. And then also industrial products can be improperly disposed of or lost during transport. And when plastic gets into the ocean, here's one thing that can happen. Large pieces of plastic can be eaten by marine life. This is a sea turtle. We have many threatened sea turtles down here in South Florida, and this turtle is eating a plastic bag because plastic bags, when they're in the ocean, mimic one of their favorite foods, which is jellyfish. So these turtles will eat this plastic thinking that it's food, and I believe almost 100 of sea turtles now are found with plastic inside of them. So this is a huge problem. This is a whale that washed up, and when the scientists opened up this whale to find out what was wrong, they found an enormous amount of plastic inside of it, and this is what the whale died of. It was filled with plastic. So these scientists laid out the contents of this whale's stomach on a tennis court, and you can see all of the plastic bags and plastic sheeting that this whale ate, and this was the reason why it died. And this is becoming increasingly more common, that scientists are finding animals filled with plastic. It's not just animals in the ocean that are becoming filled with plastic. So this is a bird called an albatross, and these albatross live on islands out in the Pacific called the Midway Atolls. The Midway atolls are covered with skeletons of albatross that look just like this all over the islands. And it's not just adult birds as well, it's also young chicks. So these birds will go out and look for food. They find plastic in the ocean and they will bring it back and feed it to their chicks, and then their chicks die as well. So, you know, so many animals, so much wildlife is being affected by plastic pollution. And, you know, we're doing what we can to stop it at the source. So what happens when plastic gets into the ocean? These are different things that can happen. So less dense plastics can float on the ocean surface. Some break up into smaller pieces and become tiny microplastics. They can photodegrade in the sun. Some sink and make their way through the water column. Some are ingested by zooplankton and fish, so the tiniest creatures in the ocean, and then eaten by larger animals. And then some eventually ends up on the seafloor, and plastic is being found in the deepest, darkest places of the ocean. And also what's really disturbing is microplastics have been found in humans for the first time. So this is a threat to human health as well. Humans are eating plastic, drinking plastic. They're finding it in human stool because humans you know, are eating and drinking things out of plastic containers. And scientists are doing studies to find out what this is, you know, what effect this is having on humans. Globally, companies produce more than 400 million tons of plastics every year. And what is driving this problem is an abundance of cheap natural gas from fracking. And if many of you know about fracking, fracking is harmful to the environment. It creates, you know, accelerates climate change. So really, when we're talking about the plastic pollution problem, we try to shift a lot of the focus away from what are we going to do after we've produced so much of it and after it's gone into the ocean. You know, how are we going to clean it up, or how are we going to recycle all of it? But how are we going to make less of it? Because really, the plastic production is a problem as well. We have to look at the source. We have to look at how we can not make so much of it, and not necessarily how are we going to clean it up and how are we going to recycle all of it. We just need to figure out how to reduce it at the source. So this is a chart of plastic production, and it's expected to quadruple before 2050. So if you think about the amount of plastic that's going into the ocean now, that would, I think it was Pew Trust study recently said that it's going to triple. So the more plastic you produce, the more plastic that's going to go into the ocean. So we really need to get a handle on this problem now. The Ocean Conservancy does a cleanup every year. And it asks their participants to participate in an app called Clean Swell. And Clean Swell is an app where every time you pick something off of the ground, you can tick off what it is and tally it. And actually, you don't even have to wait for International Coastal Cleanup Day. You can do this at any time. You can download the app and help keep track of what you pick up. So these are the single-use plastics that are most commonly collected in their beach cleanups. So you can see there's straws, stirs, forks, knives, spoons, beverage bottles, bags, plastic cups, and plates. These are things that were probably used for maybe a minute or two, a couple minutes, and then discarded. Probably items that we could have used a better material, something other than plastic, or something reusable where we didn't have to use something disposable at all. There's reusable water bottles, there's reusable utensils. So these are probably items that we didn't even need to use in the first place, but then they end up littering our oceans and waterways. I also recently wrote an opinion piece for The Invading Sea, and it was called Producing Plastic Products Generates an Enormous Amount of Greenhouse Gas Emissions. And the reason why I wrote this is because I wanted the audience to understand that plastic is tied to climate change. And we have to think about the production of plastic and how to reduce it at the source, because even just the process of producing it, transporting it is a problem. And it creates more, the whole production of plastic, the whole life cycle puts out more greenhouse gases than the aviation sector. I believe twice as much as the aviation sector. So when we're thinking about climate change, we also have to think about reducing our plastic production. This graphic is from the Center for International Environmental Law. And this is the emissions from a plastic life cycle. And you can see here that, you know, when people are talking about climate change, immediately their thoughts shift to airplanes, cars, coal plants, things like that. But we also need to think about plastic, the plastic life cycle. Do we need to use that in the first place? Or is there something alternative that we can be using? And can we be avoiding all this? So if we look at global plastics production in 2015, a very large portion of the pie is packaging. So 36% is packaging. And when you dive into that piece of the plastics pie, plastic packaging, these again are single-use materials designed for immediate disposal, things that we probably use for a minute, a couple minutes, plastic water bottle, plastic food containers, and things that again could have been avoided. So sometimes recycling is touted as an answer, and recycling is only solving a very small portion of the problem. So again, we're only recycling about 9% of the plastic we produce. And when you look into that, really only 2% is effectively recycled into something the same or equal or higher value. So usually plastic can sometimes be downcycled, which means it can be recycled maybe once or twice before it's done. So recycling is not the answer. We are not able to recycle enough, you know, in comparison to the amount that we produce. So, and the oil and gas industry, they want you focused on recycling. They want you thinking about how can you recycle all of the product that we push out on you. And we don't want to think only about recycling cleanup. We want to think about how we're not going to use it, right? If we think about the fact that it's fracking and that it's the oil and gas industry and it's creating, you know, a climate change problem. So if we look at how much plastic is going to be produced, again, those 1 million metric tons, and how much we recycle, there's no way we can recycle our way out of this problem. We have to reduce it at the source, which is what Oceana's mission is. Another thing that added to the problem is that a lot of people thought that they were recycling their plastic. They put it in the recycling bin, the truck took it away. And really, we were just shipping it over to Asia. So our plastic waste was being shipped over to nations like China, Malaysia, the Philippines. We weren't the only nation doing this. But what happened was a lot of that plastic is either dirty or not valuable, or there was just, you know, so much of it that possibly, you know, recycle the amount that we were sending over. So in 2018, China enacted this policy called National Sword. And National Sword said that they would not be accepting our plastic waste anymore. So again, we weren't the only nation that had this problem, but all of a sudden our plastic was backed up. We didn't know what to do with it. So a lot of our plastic gets incinerated, which again, creates pollution and greenhouse gases, incinerated or buried in the landfill. So it wasn't actually getting recycled. And you know, this added to our huge plastic problem. Incineration is not a solution. It's often touted as waste to energy. But it actually is totally misrepresented as renewable. It actually, you know, you have to put in a lot of garbage for the amount of energy that you want to produce. So it does not incentivize people to reduce their waste. And it basically just, you know, it needs our waste, our garbage. It releases toxic emissions, releases greenhouse gases. So incineration is not a solution to our problem. If you've ever tried to live without plastic, it can be very hard. We're often not given a lot of choices in our regular stores that we go to in our own neighborhoods. Sometimes if we want something that's not in plastic, we have to go to a specialty store, or we have to order it online. You know, it can be difficult. So, you know, there are things like shampoo bars that don't have any packaging. There are toothpaste tablets that don't require any plastic, and you mix it with water and you can brush your teeth. But you usually can't find these at your local grocery store. When you want, you know, if someone's throwing a party and they need disposable utensils, usually all you can find is plastic. If you want wooden utensils, sometimes you have to order it online. So we're not often given a lot of choices. So it can be very difficult to live plastic free. Some stores have stepped up. So this is a grocery store in England called Marks and Spencer, and they're offering plastic free grocery aisles. And this is an airline. There are now plastic free flights. So they'll offer you a flight without any single-use plastics. But it's not that common. Hopefully it'll become more common, but until that happens, Oceana's campaign goals is to work on this, working on reducing plastic, passing policies to reduce plastic, creating plastic-free zones like at your university or in your workplace, and asking companies to offer plastic-free choices. Policies regulating single-use plastics are becoming increasingly common around the world. So you can see in 2016 how it really shot up. I think, a lot of attention was being put on the plastic pollution problem in our oceans. Stories about the 5 gyres, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So, a lot of policies have been enacted around the world. Kenya, Rwanda, banning plastic bags. A lot of places in the Caribbean now, Jamaica, the Bahamas ban single-use plastics. I think I recently heard Scotland banning single-use plastics. So this is not a strange thing in many other nations. It is a little bit strange to people in Florida that may not have heard of this or may not be, be thinking about other products. But in many places of the world, it's not unusual to be banning these things. So far in the United States, this is plastic bag legislation. So this is a graphic from the National Conference of State Legislators, and the dark blue states are the ones with bans. The light blue states have a fee or a tax. They allow localities to tax. Unfortunately, the green ones here are preemption, and Florida is one of those. So a preemption means a ban on bans. So they have preempted municipalities in Florida from enacting bans. So even if your city wants to ban plastic bags, they can't because there's a preemption. And we have not been able so far in Florida to repeal these preemptions, unfortunately. So not only do we have no statewide action on plastics, but they have prevented municipalities from having home rule on this issue and being able to regulate it. So, that's a problem and something that Oceana is working on also at the state level. We will be asking our state lawmakers to repeal these preemptions because plastic pollution is a problem. It's not going to be solved through only voluntary actions. We can't solely put everything on the consumer. We need help from our government to tackle this problem. So these are municipalities that have taken action so far in Florida, and the list is growing. Even just today, the city of Boynton Beach is going to be voting in their city meeting on whether or not they're going to move forward with a foam ban on city property. The city of Fort Lauderdale will be meeting today in their city meeting, hopefully to pass a ban on polystyrene foam on their city property and their city facilities. So many cities here are taking action locally. This is a great quote from Jackie Savitz at Oceana. And if again, we're thinking about the waste end of the plastic cycle and the beginning, when your bathtub is overflowing, you don't run for a mop before you turn off the faucet. Recycling is the mop, and we need to turn off the faucet. So what can we do nationwide? Oceana usually works on federal ocean policy. With our plastics campaign, we're working at all levels, federal, state, and local. So nationwide, we have been supporting a bill called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. It is Senate Bill 3263 and HR 5845. And this bill would do a variety of things. So it would require nationwide container refunds. So you've probably heard in some states, I think very few, where you pay a little bit extra for your bottle and then it gets turned in for a refund later. And usually this prevents the bottle from being improperly discarded because people want to turn it in for their refund. It would phase out certain polluting products. It would create a carry-out bag fee, which most nations are doing right now. A minimum recycled content requirement, recycling and composting, it would improve that. Stop shipping our recycling waste to other nations that can't handle it. Our plastic production is a huge social justice issue because not only are we sending it to these nations that can't handle it, but we're putting up these plastic production facilities in neighborhoods that are low income, minority communities. One community in Louisiana, it's actually nicknamed Cancer Alley because of the high rates of cancer there because of their petrochemical plants, and they want to put another plastic production factory there. It would protect existing state actions. It would put a temporary pause on new plastics facilities and basically put more responsibility on the producer rather than the consumer. Now, what we can do in Florida, again, we have some preemptions. So we have some bans on bans. We have a ban on ban with plastic bags. So if your city wants to ban plastic bags, they cannot do that. If they want to do a total complete ban on foam, otherwise known as styrofoam, they can't do that. However, they can ban things within their own city property, city facilities, city contracts, their own parks and beaches, so that they're allowed to do. But they wouldn't be allowed to do a complete ban, meaning they wouldn't be allowed to tell your local grocery store you can't give out foam, or you can't, they can't tell all of the restaurants in the city you cannot serve anything in foam, but you can ban it on your own property. So what can be done about these preemptions? You can ask your Florida state elected officials, your representatives and your senators and your governor to fight to remove these preemptions, give us our home rule back. Or you could ask for a statewide bag ban or statewide foam ban. So either one. And then cities are also have been busy passing resolutions asking our state elected officials to do something about this. Now, what you can do locally, there's a lot you can do locally. So in your own Florida city, you can prohibit the use of certain single-use plastic foam products on city property, city-owned facilities, and city contracts and events, which is what hopefully Fort Lauderdale is passing today upon second reading. And basically that would be, the city parks, the beaches, anytime they have an event where food trucks are coming onto their property to have an event. If they're renting a pavilion, that would be included. So City Hall, you can ban these things on your own city property. You can prohibit plastic bottled water on your city property, again, city facilities. So the Village of Miami Shores earlier this year banned plastic bottled water on all city property. So they are obviously encouraging reusable bottles or something like glass, boxed, aluminum bottled water. There are other products besides plastic. You can ban single-use plastic items that don't fall under our preemption. So utensils are not preempted. If your city wants to pass a ban on plastic utensils, they can. That means that no store and no restaurant would be able to sell, distribute plastic forks, knives, or spoons. They would have to use something like wooden utensils, which again, some other cities and other nations are doing right now. Straws are not preempted either. Our Florida state legislature tried to preempt straws. They actually passed a straw preemption law. So they passed a law that said that not only could you not pass plastic straw laws, but all the ones that had already been passed would not be allowed to be enforced for a minimum of 5 years until they did a study. Luckily, our governor vetoed that. So we are still allowed to ban plastic straws. Or you could do a straws by request only. And that's really a win-win, because not only does it save money, and businesses save money because they're not giving a straw to every customer, but it helps the environment. So that would basically mean that restaurants wouldn't be putting a straw in every drink. You would have to ask for it. So you get one if you need one, and you don't if you don't. So another thing that you can help with is you can lobby where you live. So this is a picture of two South Broward High School students named Kayla and Kimberly, and I believe they've done a webinar for MEEC very recently. So the Plastic Free Mermaids started a club at South Broward High School. They helped us with advocacy, and lobbying is really just meeting with your elected officials, talking with them and telling them what you want them to do, because they represent you, right? So you don't have to go to Congress, you don't have to go to DC, you don't have to go to Tallahassee to do this. They have offices in your district. They show up at events in your district, and you can meet with them and just tell them, what's important to you and what you'd like them to do. So this picture is at March for the Ocean, and we actually did this in partnership with the MEEC. We marched from Charnow Park on the Broad Walk, and we marched to MEEC, and then we marched back. We visited Captain the Sea Turtle. And this is a picture with the Plastic Free Mermaids with our state senator, Senator Gary Farmer, our mayor, Mayor Levy, and our Broward commissioner, Commissioner Beam Fur, and educating our elected officials about plastic pollution and letting them know that this issue is important to us, and letting them know what we'd like them to do. And you can do this too. Kids can lobby, adults can lobby, anybody can lobby. It's just letting your elected officials know what you care about. And another thing you can do today is you can go to plasticfreefl.org. This is a website that was made by a concerned youth activist. And basically any information that you need on working on plastic pollution in Florida, you could send an email to all of your elected officials, city, county, state, your members of Congress. And you can also sign our letter over there at usa.oceana.org/take action. Our Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act petition is there, and it will go straight through to your members of Congress. Because which future do we want? We want healthy oceans. And I know I want healthy oceans and a healthy planet for my kids, my sons. So hopefully we can all work together on that. And this is my last slide. This is how you can become involved and follow us. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and my email is also there. Our Take Action page has all of our petitions. And again, we are international, so you can follow Oceana, our main page, and you can also follow Oceana in Florida. That's it. And I am open for questions. I didn't get to see any questions during it, so if you want to
if anybody, thank you so much. First off, that was amazing. But if anybody has any other questions, feel free to type them in the chat. There are a couple, so I'll just read them out if you want to answer them.
Okay.
So TJ says, I know it isn't related to your area, but I saw an article about Trump trying to sell oil rights in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. How likely is that to happen, and what sort of repercussions will we be seeing if it does?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I saw that too, and I haven't gotten a chance yet because I think it was very recent. I just saw that, so I haven't gotten a chance to get the ins and outs on that to be able to speak to you about that right now. But absolutely, if we have a call to action on the Arctic, it will be on our page, and that's why it's really important to become a wave maker, to sign our petitions, to follow us on social media, because when something is going down with the oceans, we will let you know, and we will let you know what to do and who to contact. So follow.
Awesome. Do you have a phone banks program or other virtual volunteer opportunities to help with campaigns?
We absolutely have virtual volunteer opportunities. We have virtual lobby days. So we've been meeting with our Congress by Zoom, and we invite constituents to do that. If you have a group that wants to do it, if you have a high school environmental club and you want, let's set up a lobby meeting with your your member of Congress, we can do that virtually. You can always contact your elected officials about our campaigns and ask them. And if you need help and you don't know how to do it, please email me and ask me, and I will help you with that. I don't know, can everybody see my email if I type it in there? Not sure, but it's cuden@oceana.org, and please reach out. I'm happy to set up any meetings and help you with that advocacy, and offer community service hours for any students that want to do advocacy as well.
I asked this question, but you kind of in like the middle of your presentation, but I think you kind of got to it by the end. But I asked because, like you had said, corporations have put it on the consumers that like it's our problem, like we need to deal with the plastic pollution. But how would we, because it's not our problem. Well, it is our problem, but like they're pumping it out there. How can we hold accountable? And I think that you kind of tied that in with talking to your lawmakers, the local level and the state level as well.
Yeah, so the oil and gas industry and the plastic industry is always going to try to turn it on you and think about, how are you going to pay for this? How are you going to recycle all of this? How are you going to clean it all up? And we want to put the focus on producer responsibility. Well, you need to give us choices, and you need to make sure that you're not giving us so much of this product and making so much of it, right? Because even when we want, like we said, even when we want to be plastic free, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you don't have a choice, and we want choices, right? We at least want that choice. So, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, it's brand new. We hope that it gains momentum. You can ask your members of Congress to co-sponsor that bill. And, it would be, a revolutionary thing, not so revolutionary in some other nations where they're already doing these things, but we really need to catch up here. And, we need to be a leader on this. We know that plastic pollution is a problem. We can see it on our beaches. Many of you have been to beach cleanups. You know that it's an issue, and you know that it's not all coming from other nations, right? Sometimes they also want to put the blame all on other nations. We are also putting a lot of plastic into the environment. So we need to do what we can here, and that the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act will cover a lot of those bases.
I've seen not recently, but within the last couple of years, just how scientists are trying to use either different types of mushrooms or algae to make a more sustainable packaging product. Have you seen any of that? Do you have any ideas if it's successful or not?
Yeah, I do see, you know, a lot of different products mentioned. Again, there's also a lot of greenwashing, so you have to be careful. There are a lot of products that are marketed as, you know, eco-friendly, and you have to be really careful. I know that when we passed plastic ordinances here in Hollywood, some stores were really confused. They were buying things like oxo-degradable bags. And oxo-degradable is basically just a plastic bag that breaks apart quickly in oxygen to make tinier microplastics. So it wasn't green at all. So unfortunately, you know, get your money back because it's not green. So you have to be careful, really research the products that you're buying to see if they're truly green. But you know, anything that we can use out of an alternative product that's more sustainable, like bamboo, you know, bamboo utensils, that's the way to go. Really, we want to try to just use less waste in general, because everything that you send to the landfill is going to create greenhouse gases as it's sitting there, right? So you just need to try to shift to reusable. You know, am I going out to eat? What do I need to eat? Do I need a container? You know, I'll bring my own container for leftovers, you know. But again, putting it all on us. But, you know, I try to do that as an individual, but I know that it's going to create larger collective action. So I always tell people, like, as much time as you spend doing something as an individual or beach cleanup, that try to think of a larger collective action that you can also do. So let's get a bunch of friends and call our mayor, or let's get a bunch of friends and call our member of Congress, because legislation is going to go a long way. It's not, you know, there's a lot of people that know better, right? They know not supposed to be using all these bags or these, you know, a different coffee cup every time you go out to coffee. But, you know, it's going to take larger actions. We cannot put it all on voluntary actions.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned taking containers when you go out to restaurants. So I used to live over on the west coast of Florida, and there was this one Indian restaurant I loved. I would get takeout quite often, but I would order it when I was there, and I'd give them my containers because they used a lot of styrofoam. So I became Tupperware girl to them. They like refused to learn my name, but they knew it. And they were always so excited because they're like, thank you. I'm sure to help them more on cutting their costs, because then they get to save a couple packaging. But it's still like it took maybe 5 extra minutes of planning on my part, just making sure I had the container in my car, and then just planning it out to make sure that there was enough time for me to get it. But
yeah, and I wish that, you know, restaurants knew that consumers care about that. Consumers do care about the environment, and we're probably totally happy, even if it was an extra 5 cents for a container, to pay that, to be able to not pollute the environment. And also, when you think about it, a lot of these plastics have chemicals in it that are bad for our health. It's bad for, you know, it especially when you put hot things in it, you know, and heat it up, it leaks, you know, these chemicals into it. So, you know, people care about this. They want healthier products that are better for our health and better for the environment. So, you know, more restaurants do need to do this. I know Surfrider Foundation has an ocean friendly restaurants program that restaurants can join to be more, you know, ocean friendly. So they should look into that too. But yeah, individual actions are good. Corporate actions are good, you know, voluntary, but, you know, we're going to go that step further.
Kind of tying into the Surfrider restaurant list, TJ wants to know, is there a site or organization that you can go to get recommendations or confirmations for real green products, not just like that greenwashing you were saying?
Yeah, actually, I know on the plasticfreefl.org site, plasticfreefl.org, it's going to have a tab that says business involvement. And under business involvement, it has some resources from Debris Free Oceans. And Debris Free Oceans is actually a local organization in Miami, and they do sustainable consulting. So they can talk with business owners about which products you can give them product guides and what's green and what's not. I think they have some recommendations on their site as well, Debris Free Oceans. And they also have a reusables calculator. So they can show businesses how in the long run you can save by not using all this disposable stuff. So
oh, that's really cool. I know if you put it in terms of money, people are going to be like, okay, I'm on board now.
Exactly. And they can pretty much show you every time that you can save money in the long run by doing reusable instead of disposable.
That's amazing. One last question. Do you have any recommendations to be green friendly during COVID? A lot of places aren't letting you bring in those reusable bags for health reasons, and takeout is always full of plastic as well.
Yeah, so I know that there have been a lot of studies done recently, and they might also be on that plasticfreefl.org site, that, you know, these using plastic isn't necessarily, you know, any safer than using another product, a paper product or a reusable product. How I stay safe during COVID, I still use reusable bags. I haven't had a store tell me yet that I can't use them. Sometimes they tell me that I have to bag the things myself if I bring my own bag. But I haven't had a store yet tell me that I can't. But I just, when I go to the store and they do the bags, I just wash them as soon as I get. I wash them after every use. So yeah.
I love Trader Joe's because they have the chocolate peanut butter cups, and for a while they were not allowing you to bring your reusable bags. I know that the one that I went to, they switched it that if you bring it, you have to pack it yourself.
Yeah. So I'm such a stickler with bags. I gave up bags, I want to say something like 11, 12 years ago. So my younger son has never seen me bring him into the house. But if I can't use my bags, I mean, I really don't forget anymore. But if something like that happened, I personally would put just everything in the cart without any bags and just deal with it later when I get to my car. But that's just me.
I do the arm method. If I forget my bags, I'm like, all right, whatever I can carry, that's what I'm bringing today. Because it just hurt. Like using all those plastic bags just hurts, especially with Publix when they package everything in plastic to begin with. So
yeah, what I usually do is I keep a large bin in my car, and I can just, if I forget my bags, I just put everything in the cart, and then I just put everything in the bin when I get there. So
I like that. That's a good idea. Normally I'm around in my trunk and I'm like, oh, there goes my avocados.
But I think in the beginning, everyone was real scared of that in COVID because it was very unsure. There hadn't been a lot of studies done yet. But I think now, even states that passed bag laws and repealed them due to COVID have now reinstated them. So I think there has diminished with more knowledge that we've learned.
Awesome. All right. I think that's everything. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any questions. Yeah, that is all. Catherine, thank you so much. This was very, very cool. Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks, Jennifer. If you guys have any questions, I did type in her email address. It's Uden, CUDEN @oceana.org. So especially if you want to get involved with environmental groups, practicing their lobbying skills, things like that, definitely reach out to her. We recorded this, we'll edit it, post it on our YouTube channel later on. Give us a couple of days to get that going. And as always, we'll be having another one this Thursday at 3 p.m. with Estrella Malca. And she is a larval fish ecologist who currently works with the University of Miami. So if you guys are around Thursday at 3 o'clock, please join us again for another MEEC webinar. Catherine, thank you again. This was really great. And I hope you guys had a great time. And if you have any questions, feel free to email her or email us at meek@nova.edu. And thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for joining.
Yeah, have a great day. See you guys.
You too. Bye.
Bye.